A flight attendant makes a split-second decision that spirals into something far bigger than she ever expected. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what you would have done if you witnessed this. Maddie Cooper held her passport in one hand and her boarding pass in the other, feet swinging just above the cold tile floor of Terminal D at Roseview International. Her ponytail swished behind her back, and the tips of her pink Converse barely grazed the edge of the seat. To the business traveler 2 seats down, she probably looked like any other teenage girl waiting for her gate to open. And that's what she wanted, to be seen, just as she was. She was a girl, a 14-year-old girl, a proud, confident, transgender girl. It had taken time for her to get here, not just to the airport, but to this version of herself. There'd been years of questions, long talks with Dad on the porch swing, and moments of fear so sharp they still woke her up sometimes. But ever since her father, Derek Cooper, stood by her the day she told him she was a girl, she never walked into a room alone again. Not really. The day's flight wasn't just a trip to visit her grandmother in San Diego. It was the first time Maddie would travel solo. She'd already passed the TSA screening with flying colors, literally. The agent complimented her rainbow sparkly hoodie. She grinned thinking about it now, heart fluttering in a good way. Independence, freedom, recognition. Passengers for Flight 267 to San Diego boarding will begin shortly, the speaker above crackled. That was her. She got up, smoothed her leggings, and adjusted the small backpack on her shoulder. Her boarding group, Group 2. She didn't care about the group number. She cared about the fact that her name was on that ticket, Madelyn Cooper, and it matched her ID and her gender marker. All updated, all legal, all hers. As she approached the gate, she noticed the flight attendant in charge of the scanner. A woman in her 50s with tight blonde curls and lipstick drawn in a sharp practiced curve. Her name tag read Sandra. Her smile, however, didn't reach her eyes. "Boarding pass?" Sandra asked, not even looking at Maddie. "Yes, ma'am," Maddie said, offering both her pass and her ID like she'd practice. Sandra glanced at them, then frowned. The kind of frown that makes your skin crawl before your brain catches up. "This ticket doesn't match," she said flatly. Maddie blinked. I think it does. That's my name." Sandra held up the ticket, then the ID. "This is for a girl named Madelyn." "That's me," Maddie said, quieter this time. "I'm transgender. My name and gender marker were changed last year. It's all current." Sandra's eyes moved up slowly from the ID to Maddie's face, and something shifted in her expression. It wasn't confusion, it was disbelief. Disbelief wearing a fake smile. "I'm sorry, sweetie," she said in that tone adults use when they're pretending to be polite, "but this can't be right." She looked over her shoulder and gave a tight chuckle to her coworker behind the counter, as if sharing an inside joke. Maddie's stomach tightened. "I just came through TSA with it," Maddie said, voice still calm. "They checked everything, twice." Sandra clicked her tongue and looked around theatrically, drawing attention from 2 passengers already lined up behind Maddie. "Security's not my concern. I'm the one letting people on this plane," she said, stepping aside and holding up the boarding pass like it was contaminated. Then, in one swift motion that made Maddie freeze, Sandra ripped it clean down the middle. The sound was sharp, final. Maddie's breath caught in her throat. A boy in a hoodie behind her muttered, "What the hell?" and someone to the side whispered, "She really just did that?" "Uh-huh." "I'm going to need you to step out of line," Sandra said, now openly staring at Maddie with thinly veiled contempt. "We can't board you with a fraudulent ticket." Maddie felt her cheeks flush, but not from embarrassment, from shame. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because the way Sandra looked at her made her feel like she had. Like she didn't belong in her own skin, let alone on that plane. "I can call my dad," Maddie said softly, reaching for her phone. Sandra laughed. "Sure, honey, go ahead. Maybe he can tell us who really bought this ticket." Maddie tapped the screen with trembling fingers, stepping to the side. Her vision blurred as the screen lit up. "Dad," she hit call. It rang once. Then, "Hey, sweetheart, are you boarding?" Maddie's voice cracked. "Dad? They won't let me on. She tore up my ticket. She said I wasn't really me." Silence. "Then put me on speaker." Maddie's hand shook slightly as she turned it on. Sandra crossed her arms, already bored. Hello? Her dad's voice rang out, calm but firm. This is Derek Cooper. I'd like to speak to the attendant who just tore up my daughter's ticket. Sandra rolled her eyes and leaned toward the phone like she was humoring a customer service call. Sir, this is airline property, and we reserve the right to refuse. You just denied boarding to Madelyn Cooper, Derek said, cutting her off, which means you denied boarding to the daughter of the man who signs your paychecks, and you just ripped up a legal ticket issued by my company. There was a pause. Maddie watched Sandra's expression falter for the first time. What did you say your name was again? Sandra asked, her voice suddenly tight. I didn't, Derek said, cool and measured. But you're about to see it at the top of every employee memo for the next 3 months. Maddie looked around. People were staring now, some with wide eyes, some murmuring, all waiting. Sandra swallowed, hard. Maddie took a breath, standing straighter than before. She wasn't going to cry. Not this time. Maddie's phone was still in her hand, speaker on, Derek's voice echoing through the gate area. The silence that followed his words clung to the air like static. Sandra's jaw twitched, her lips pressing into a tight, bitter line. For the first time, she didn't have something smug to say. She looked between Maddie, the phone, and the line of onlookers. Sweetheart, Derek said again, voice steady but low, like he was holding something back. I need you to hand the phone to someone in charge. Not the person who ripped up your ticket, someone else. Maddie blinked fast, her hands still shaking. Behind the counter, a younger gate agent who had been watching everything with widening eyes suddenly stepped forward. I'm the assistant manager on this shift, the young man said, his voice nervous but sincere. Marcus, I'm Marcus. Sandra's head whipped toward him. Marcus, we don't take calls from passengers. Actually, Marcus interrupted, surprising himself. If that's who he says he is, we probably should. Maddie handed Marcus the phone. He took it carefully like it might explode. Hello, he said. There was a pause. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Cooper. Marcus stiffened visibly. Oh, I understand. Yes. Immediately, sir. He looked at Sandra, then back at Maddie, then straight ahead like he was trying not to panic. Right away. I'll take care of it, yes. Sorry, sir. He handed the phone back to Maddie with trembling fingers. He said not to worry. He's already making calls to, everyone. Maddie didn't know what that meant exactly, but it felt like the beginning of something important. Sandra's posture shifted from confident to cold. She was quiet now, but her glare still burned. Maddie knew that look. She'd seen it before. People who couldn't say what they really wanted to say because now the rules were in the way. A few people in line started applauding. It wasn't loud, it wasn't grand, just a few soft claps from strangers who had seen enough to know right from wrong. Marcus stepped out from behind the counter. Madelyn, I am so sorry. We'll reissue your boarding pass. You'll be in first class. Per your father's request, please come with me. He gave a quick, awkward gesture toward the scanner. Then he turned to Sandra and very carefully said, You're relieved from this gate? Maddie watched as Sandra hesitated, then stormed off, muttering under her breath, her shoulder bumping against the stanchion as she passed. She didn't look back. The gate area buzzed with whispers. Maddie didn't want to be a spectacle, but she also wasn't going to shrink. She followed Marcus toward the gate. With every step, her heartbeat slowed, her hands began to still, and her spine straightened more with each stride. As Marcus scanned her new boarding pass and ushered her toward the jet bridge, Maddie glanced at the freshly printed slip. Madelyn Cooper, female, group 1. It was just a piece of paper, but to her, it was a piece of truth. The plane's interior was cool and quiet, the hum of the engine soft beneath the cabin music. The flight attendants on board hadn't heard what happened outside yet, or if they had, they didn't show it. Seat 2A right up here, Marcus said, pointing. If there's anything else you need. Maddie nodded. Thank you. I'm good now. She slid into the wide, plush seat, the kind of seat she usually walked past without looking. As passengers trickled in, a few passed her without a glance, just another girl in a window seat. But one older woman with silver hair and a red scarf paused, looking at her thoughtfully. You did good, dear, the woman said softly. Don't let people like that shrink you. Maddie smiled. I won't. When the cabin door closed and the plane backed away from the gate, she finally let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from Dad. "Proud of you. Let me know when you land. We'll talk later. Big things coming." She stared at the screen for a second, heart catching. Big things. That was always Dad's way of saying something was already in motion. She didn't need to ask what, but part of her wondered. She stared out the window as the plane taxied down the runway, her reflection in the glass layered over the tarmac. For years, she hadn't been able to see herself clearly in moments like this, not as she truly was. But now she saw a girl, a daughter, a transgender teen who belonged exactly where she was. The wheels lifted from the ground. She closed her eyes and leaned back, letting the hum of the engines lull her into calm. The moment held a weight she couldn't quite name, not just about a ticket or a gate or a woman who thought she could erase her with a tear of paper. It was about being seen, being believed. The world had tried to define her before, teachers who refused to use her name, doctors who called her he without looking up, strangers who stared too long in bathrooms, even family members who said she'd grow out of it. But now there was no going backwards. She was Madelyn Cooper, not in hiding, not in limbo, not in question. Somewhere above the clouds, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small leather journal. She flipped to a blank page, uncapped her pen, and wrote in big letters across the top, "Flight log 1, first solo mission." Underneath it, she wrote something smaller, just for her. "This is who I am, and I'm not afraid anymore." The seatbelt sign had just clicked off when Maddie opened her eyes again. The plane had reached cruising altitude, and the cabin lights dimmed into a soft bluish glow. A flight attendant passed by offering drinks, her expression neutral but kind. Maddie asked for ginger ale with a smile and received it without hesitation. No questions, no comments, no glances that lingered too long. It was almost jarring how normal everything felt now. She stared at the plastic cup, the bubbles fizzing to the surface. Her reflection wobbled on the surface of the liquid, fragmented. Maddie thought about how many moments like this she used to dread. Going through TSA, public bathrooms, school field trips. Because someone, somewhere, always made it weird. Being a transgender teen wasn't just about correcting people. It was about constantly bracing for what might go wrong. But today, she hadn't broken. Even when that woman tried to erase her with a smug smile and a snap of a ticket, Maddie hadn't folded. And now here she was, 38,000 feet above everything that once tried to make her feel small. She looked out the window again. Clouds rolled below like slow ocean waves. Cities were tiny glimmers, blinking far below like stars that had forgotten which direction to shine. Her journal lay open on her lap. She flipped to a new page and started to write again. "People will try to clip your wings just because they can't understand how you fly, but you were born with wings for a reason." She was proud of that one. Across the aisle, an older man glanced over, gave her a small nod, then went back to reading his newspaper, not staring, just noticing. It felt good to be noticed like that, for nothing other than existing. But the peace didn't last long. Halfway through the flight, a voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just been informed of a slight mechanical issue with one of our secondary systems. Nothing serious, but protocol requires us to divert for an inspection. We'll be landing shortly in Phoenix and expect to resume your journey as soon as we're cleared. Thank you for your patience." A ripple of groans followed the announcement. Maddie sat up straight. Phoenix? She'd never been to Phoenix. Her connecting flight didn't run through there. She looked down at her phone, then at her itinerary. She was supposed to land in San Diego. And now everything was out of rhythm. Passengers began murmuring. A mom, 2 rows back, was trying to calm her toddler. A businessman was already on the phone rescheduling a meeting. Maddie just stared at the seat in front of her, her hands suddenly tight around the edges of her journal. She wasn't afraid of flying, but sudden change, set off something inside her, something old, something she thought she'd grown out of. She'd worked hard to feel safe in places she didn't control, and now she had no control again. She reached for her phone and saw a new text from her dad. "Heard they're diverting. I'm on it. We'll keep you posted. Just breathe, kiddo." She smiled a little, then exhaled. He always knew. Always. The plane began its descent earlier than expected, and the slight jolt of turbulence reminded her how fragile everything could be. It was one thing to stand up for yourself in a terminal with witnesses and cameras and a phone call to your dad, but what about in the quiet? What about in between places, airports she didn't know, surrounded by strangers? She didn't like not knowing. When the wheels touched down in Phoenix, Maddie was the last to unbuckle. The captain had promised updates, but instead, a gate agent met them the moment they stepped off the plane. All passengers will be rebooked, the agent announced, standing at the front of the terminal. Please form a line and have your IDs ready. If you have special circumstances, let us know right away. Maddie joined the line, feeling that old anxiety creep back in. Her hands were steady, but her chest felt tight. Behind her, 2 college-age girls were whispering. One of them had clearly seen the incident back at the last airport. Wait, is that her? One said. The girl from the gate? The one that woman yelled at? Maddie's shoulders stiffened. They weren't being mean, just curious. I think so. She's trans, right? The other asked. And there it was, the word again, not spat out this time, just stated, but loud enough that the man 2 rows behind them turned his head. Maddie didn't move, didn't look. She just kept facing forward. Yeah, the first one said, quieter now. I saw what happened. She handled it like a badass. Maddie blinked. Her breath caught again, but for a different reason. The compliment had come out of nowhere, casual, offhand, but it landed like a warm hand on her back. When it was her turn at the counter, a new agent, a tall woman named Priya, smiled gently. Name? Madelyn Cooper, Maddie said. Priya typed, her brows lifted. Oh, that Madelyn Cooper. Maddie tensed again. What do you mean? Priya leaned in a little, her voice lowered. We got an internal alert to flag your record. VIP. Your dad's name popped up on the rebooking priority list. We've already got a new flight lined up for you, and someone's waiting to escort you to the lounge until it's ready. Maddie's eyes widened. Wait, really? Priya nodded. Yep, first class again, and there's a fruit tray waiting with your name on it. Maddie laughed, like an actual laugh, for the first time all day. That sounds awesome. As she stepped away from the counter, the girls from behind her gave her a thumbs up. She didn't say anything, just smiled and waved. She was still Maddie, still transgender, still here, and still rising. Maddie sank into the soft armchair of the airline's VIP lounge, a cool glass of lemonade in one hand and her phone buzzing gently in the other. The lounge didn't look like any airport space she'd ever been in. There were floor-to-ceiling windows, giant plants that didn't look fake, and real silverware clinking gently against porcelain from the small buffet line. For the first time that day, it felt like the world had stopped spinning so fast. She pulled out her journal again, flipping past the pages she'd filled on the plane, and tapped the pen against her lip. But she couldn't focus. Something about the quiet made the loud parts of her day ring louder. Her name, her identity, her truth was being a transgender girl, wasn't a secret. Not to the people who mattered. But the way Sandra had acted, the way people looked afterward, it stuck to her skin like something she couldn't rinse off. She glanced at her phone and saw another text from Dad. Still making calls. Sandra's not going to get away with this. But I need you to stay calm. You're doing amazing. Maddie's lips twitched. She could picture him pacing around his office, headset in one ear, talking fast and calm the way only CEOs and superhero dads could. She wanted to tell him she was okay, but part of her wasn't sure she was. She put her phone down and grabbed one of the sugar cookies from the tray next to her. It had little pink sprinkles and reminded her of the one she used to bake with her mom when she was still little. Back when she was still trying to figure herself out. Back when he was the name on every label. Even though it never felt right. She chewed slowly, letting the memory warm her. Then a notification popped up on her phone. Trending Madelyn Cooper, now top 20 in the country. Maddie blinked, she tapped it. There, in full view, was a blurry cell phone video shot in the airport gate earlier that morning, the moment Sandra tore her ticket. The gasp from the crowd, her voice saying, "I'm transgender. That's my name." Maddie's heart thudded in her chest. The caption under the video read, "Flight attendant rips up trans girl's ticket, then finds out who her dad is." The clip had already been viewed over 1 million times. Comments were flooding in. This kid handled it better than most adults. I'm crying. She's so brave. That woman should be fired. We love you, Maddie. Trans girls are girls, period. But then, the others, this is what happens when you let them in spaces they don't belong. That wasn't a girl, let's be real. Snowflakes always playing the victim. Maddie dropped the phone onto the armrest like it had shocked her. She stared straight ahead, heart racing. She didn't ask to be in a viral video. She didn't want people knowing about her because of a fight. She just wanted to visit her grandma, read her book on the plane, maybe get hot chocolate on the way. But she didn't want to be anyone's symbol or target. A soft voice broke her spiral. You okay, miss? Maddie looked up to see one of the lounge staff standing beside her, a woman in her 30s with short hair and kind eyes. You look a little pale, she added. Maddie hesitated. Then she nodded. Yeah, I'm just processing. The woman smiled gently and offered her a fresh bottle of water. Well, I don't know if it helps, but we're all rooting for you back there. You're the talk of the staff room, the good kind. Maddie blinked, surprised. Really? Oh, yeah. Some of us saw the clip. Some of us were at that gate, she said, then leaned down slightly. That lady? Sandra? She's had complaints before. Yours just happened to be the one that opened the floodgates. Maddie didn't know what to say. The woman gave her a knowing look. Sometimes people need a face to the story before they believe it's real. Then she walked off, leaving Maddie in silence again, but this time the silence felt different. It felt full of voices, support, and something else she couldn't quite name yet. She picked her phone back up. New message from Dad. Just saw the video. Looks like you're famous. She replied, didn't want to be. He answered almost instantly. Famous or not, you made people see. That matters. Maddie exhaled slowly. Her gaze drifted to the window where the Arizona sun was dipping low, casting golden light across the tarmac. Planes moved like lazy shadows beneath it, and for a second, the whole world seemed quiet again. Another notification buzzed. This time, it wasn't from the news, it was from her school. A group chat, her classmates, people she hadn't even expected to notice. We saw you on Twitter, that was wild. Proud to know you, Maddie. Seriously. Dude, you are like heroic. Come sit with us when school starts again, please. Maddie grinned, wide. Her eyes burned, but it wasn't from sadness. She'd fought so hard just to be seen, just to live her truth. And now they saw her not as a problem, not as a question mark, but as her. Her name, her story, her place in the world. It wasn't just hers anymore. She opened her journal again and wrote one more sentence. Before her new flight was announced. The sky isn't high enough for who I'm becoming. The wheels of the plane touched down in San Diego with a soft, bouncing jolt. Maddie braced herself gently against the seat in first class, her heart fluttering, not with nerves, but anticipation. The cabin lights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the rows of sleepy passengers beginning to gather their things. The flight had been quiet, smooth, peaceful. No one asked questions about her name. No one challenged who she was. She existed exactly as herself, Madelyn Cooper, transgender girl, daughter of a CEO, and now face of something bigger. She hadn't meant for any of it. She hadn't planned to be on phones and screens and hashtags. But as her sneakers touched the terminal floor, as she stepped off that jet bridge into the familiar scent of a coastal airport, Maddie knew something had changed. Not just the way people saw her, the way she saw herself. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Dozens of notifications were pouring in, articles, interviews, blogs. Her name had been included in a new wave of stories about transgender rights and airline policies. One article headline stood out. Trans teen confronts discrimination in viral airport video and wins. Wins. It felt weird to think of it that way. She hadn't asked for a fight. But if she'd won anything, it was visibility, validation, a chance to walk into the world without needing to explain who she was at every door. Outside baggage claim, Maddie spotted the familiar figure of her grandmother, Elaine, standing with a hand-painted sign that read, "Welcome, Maddie." She almost cried right there. Elaine's eyes filled as she pulled her into a tight hug. "I saw everything," she whispered into Maddie's hair. That woman had no idea who she was dealing with. Maddie pulled back and laughed. "Neither did I, Grandma." Elaine beamed, her voice warm but firm. "You made us all proud. And more importantly, you stood your ground. No one ever taught me how to do that when I was your age. But you taught us." Maddie didn't know what to say. She hugged her again instead. On the ride back to the house, the two of them talked about everything but the incident. Maddie's favorite book lately, a new sketch she was working on, and the fact that her grandma's cat had learned how to open the fridge. It felt nice. But just as they pulled into the driveway, Elaine's phone buzzed, and she glanced down. "Oh," she said, surprised. "Your dad just sent me this. Looks like he's making a statement soon." Maddie's brows rose. "A statement? Like a press conference?" Elaine nodded. "Live stream. Big news about the airline. You want to watch?" Maddie hesitated, then nodded. They walked into the house together, Maddie's bag slung over one shoulder. The moment she stepped inside, she could smell the candles Elaine always kept lit, vanilla and cinnamon, cozy and safe. She kicked off her shoes, tossed her hoodie onto the back of the couch, and joined her grandmother in front of the TV. The live stream was already in progress. There he was, Derek Cooper, her dad, standing behind a podium with the Celestial Skies logo glowing behind him, calm, composed, and sharper than the suit he wore. He never looked like the kind of dad who ran a company, but today he did. "Good afternoon," he began. "By now, many of you have seen the footage involving my daughter, Madelyn Cooper, at Roseview International Airport." He paused, just long enough to let her name settle in the air. "My daughter is a proud transgender young woman," he continued. "She is strong, articulate, and brave, qualities that no one should have to prove just to board a flight. And yet, she was forced to defend her identity in front of dozens of strangers because one employee refused to see the human being in front of her." Maddie gripped the throw pillow in her lap. Her throat felt tight, but not in a bad way. "In light of this incident," Derek said, "Celestial Skies Airlines will be implementing a mandatory diversity and anti-discrimination training for all flight and ground staff. This program will include real stories from the LGBTQ+ community, stories like Madelyn's. It's time we stop pretending these moments are rare. They're not. We just don't always catch them on camera." Elaine's hand slipped into hers. Maddie held on tight. "I want to be clear," Derek said, voice steady. "This isn't just about one employee, one moment, or one girl. It's about recognizing the quiet injustices that happen every day, the ones that make people feel like they don't belong. That ends now. Not just in this company, but wherever we have influence." The room was still, silent, just the sound of her father's voice and the soft hum of the screen. "There is no seat assignment," he said finally, "that can determine someone's worth. There is no boarding group that defines someone's dignity, and there is no gate where love and identity should be left behind. We stand with our transgender passengers, and we stand with my daughter." The live stream ended. The screen faded to black. Elaine wiped her eyes. Maddie stared straight ahead, then whispered, "He said my name." Elaine nodded, her voice cracking. "Yes, he did, baby. Yes, he did." Later that night, after her suitcase was unpacked and her pajamas were on, Maddie curled up on the couch and opened her journal one more time. The pages were filling fast now, not just with feelings, but with moments. Proof. Growth. She scribbled something bold across the top of the next page. "She's not a secret anymore." And underneath it, "I don't need to hide who I am just to make other people comfortable. Being seen isn't scary anymore. It's a start." She shut the journal, leaned back, and let herself rest. Tomorrow might bring more questions, more headlines, more comments from strangers who thought they knew her. But tonight, she was home. A girl, a daughter, a survivor. And the sky wasn't the limit anymore. It was just the beginning. The morning sun warmed the windows of Elaine's kitchen, casting golden rays across the marble countertop as Maddie stirred a spoon through her cereal. She was still in her pajamas, loose flannel pants, and a t-shirt that said, "Girls like us rise." The phrase felt different now. It wasn't just something she wore, it was something she believed. Elaine hummed as she poured coffee into two mismatched mugs, sliding one toward Maddie. "Your dad called. He said you might want to check your email." Maddie raised an eyebrow and reached for her phone, expecting more headlines or notifications. Instead, there it was, an email from the Celestial Skies executive office. She tapped it open. Subject, "Maddie, we'd like to invite you." She read aloud, "Dear Madelyn Cooper, in light of the recent events and the impact your story has had, we would be honored if you would join us next month as our special guest at the unveiling of Celestial Skies' new Diversity Initiative program. We would also like to formally invite you to speak on behalf of transgender youth across the country. Your voice, your story has changed the way people see, listen, and act. Thank you." Maddie's jaw dropped slightly. "They want me to speak?" Elaine looked up from her coffee, smile blooming like sunrise. "Of course they do. You gave them something real, something they couldn't ignore." Maddie stared at the screen, her heart doing this strange, fast little beat like it couldn't keep up with the moment. She'd thought speaking up at the gate was brave enough, but this was something else. It meant her story didn't end in that terminal. It was just beginning. The weeks that followed blurred together. Interviews, school updates, more texts from classmates, even a letter from a girl in Wisconsin who said, "You made me feel like I wasn't alone anymore." Maddie saved that one in her journal. Her dad visited 2 weekends later. He wore his usual jeans and hoodie, still looking more like a soccer dad than a corporate powerhouse. But when he hugged her at the door, he whispered, "You've done more in 1 month than most of us do in a lifetime." They sat on the porch swing that night under a sky freckled with stars, the kind of sky that made you believe anything was possible. "Are you nervous?" he asked. See, she didn't even have to ask what he meant. "Kind of," she admitted. "It's one thing to live it, it's another thing to say it out loud for the whole world to hear." He nodded. "That's what makes it powerful and scary. But when you speak, you're not just talking for yourself. You're opening a door for someone who hasn't found their voice yet." Maddie looked out into the dark yard. "Do you think I'm too young for all this?" Her dad's answer came without hesitation. "I think the world has been too old for too long, too slow to catch up. People like you, you're not too young. You're right on time." The event came faster than expected. When they arrived at the corporate headquarters, Maddie was met with a rush of warmth. Executives greeting her by name, press cameras snapping politely, and employees clapping as she walked in. Someone handed her a name badge that read, "Madelyn Cooper's," she/her keynote speaker. Her heart fluttered. In the main hall, a long banner stretched across the back wall. Every seat deserved respect, a commitment to diversity and inclusion. The chairs filled quickly. Front row, her dad, Elaine, 2 of Maddie's teachers who had flown out just for this. She stood backstage, holding her speech on cue cards, fingers trembling just slightly. Then they called her name. She walked out slowly, her flats barely making a sound on the wood floor. The microphone was waiting, and so were hundreds of eyes. But the moment she stepped up, everything stilled. "My name is Madelyn Cooper," she began, voice clear and strong. "I'm 14 years old. I'm a daughter. I'm an artist. I'm a student. And I'm a transgender girl." A hush fell over the crowd, not from shock, but reverence. "Last month, I was told I didn't belong on a plane because someone didn't believe my name." She looked at me and she saw a problem. "But what I hope you remember, is that I was just a girl trying to get to her grandma's house." She paused, letting the words settle. "We talk a lot about rules and policies, but what matters most is how we treat people. If your company can fly across oceans, it should also be able to carry the weight of every passenger's truth." A ripple of nods moved through the room. I didn't want to become a headline. I just wanted to be me. But maybe that's what we need more of, people who show up exactly as they are and say, "I deserve to be here." She closed her eyes for half a breath, then lifted her chin. "Because we all deserve to board with dignity." The audience stood before she even finished her last word. The applause thundered through the hall. Her dad's eyes were glassy, Elaine clapping like it was the grand finale of a Broadway show. And Maddie? She stood tall, grounded, seen. Afterward, people lined up to shake her hand, ask questions, take pictures. But the moment that stayed with her happened in a quiet corner by the refreshments. A girl about 12, shy and small, with her hair in a tight braid, approached her. "Hi," she whispered. I'm trans too, and I was scared. But then I saw your video." Maddie knelt slightly to meet her eyes. "Do you feel scared right now?" The girl shook her head. "No, I feel okay. You made it feel okay." Maddie smiled, reaching for her hand. "Then that means we're both exactly where we belong." Later, as the sun set outside the glass walls of the conference hall, Maddie stepped out onto the balcony alone, her speech card still folded in her hand. The breeze tugged gently at her jacket. She looked out at the horizon. It stretched far and wide. And somewhere out there, she knew another kid would be stepping into an airport, holding a ticket with their real name, wondering if the world would let them pass. She hoped they'd remember her story. She hoped they'd know they weren't walking alone. Because Madelyn Cooper, transgender girl, survivor, daughter, voice of change, had already cleared the runway. And now she was flying